What's going on, gamers? So we got full details here about path tracing on the PS5 Pro coming out by Digital Foundry. They're giving a full analysis on it, whether this will be possible in the future, what this actually means, how Mark Cerny actually got thanked by the EA tech expert himself. Interesting stuff, right? And yeah, it's really nice because they give you all the details of what's possible, how it actually had a 40 hertz aspect set up, and then what was happening in this other mode as well. We actually want to know what's going on with this because nobody would have thought it ever would have been possible to even think about path tracing on a PS5 Pro. But here we have some analysis by Digital Foundry. Let's see what they have to say and let's get into this. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. I'm definitely looking forward to this because this is going to be telling us a lot about what to expect in the future and how maybe AMD, EA, and Sony are testing things right now to see what they can do. Probably not this year or maybe next year, you never know. But definitely for PS6, because we know that's going to be something huge. So here we go. Let me get off the camera. Let's get into this.
The first news topic of the week. This one came out of nowhere and from a surprising source. We were all set to talk about Assassin's Creed Black Flag Resynced as our lead story, but then Alex gained access to the GDC archive of talks from this year, and we found something that I think, Alex, it's quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
exactly
hidden away in a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful presentation about F125's path tracing. It says F125 path tracing at 200 miles per hour. This was presented by Tom Hammersley of EA, Codemasters in this case, and it was all about the path tracing implementation in F125, specifically on PC. So there was a ton of really good information there, developed over 2 years. 1 year with two senior engine programmers, really fast. But the golden nugget was at the very end of the presentation when going over performance numbers. And he specifically references the RX 9070 XT as being surprisingly okay at the path tracing, like roughly 30 hertz at 4K FSR3 quality mode. And he said, like, basically, okay, well, can this run on lower end stuff? And then he cues up a video of path tracing running on the PlayStation 5 Pro. You heard me right. PS5 Pro running F1 with path tracing.
Yeah.
And amazing.
There's basically when the PS5 Pro came out, we probably didn't think about path tracing being anything really viable for that console.
No way.
RDNA 3, RDNA 4, they're better at RT, but not super impressive always. And this is running on there. So there's two things. He throws up a slide after he shows off this quick video showcasing it running. And basically, it's running internally at 1080p. It's being upscaled to 4K via PSSR. He doesn't say PSSR 1 or 2, but it really doesn't matter because they have a very similar frame time cost. Yeah. It's running a daylight track, which is kind of important. I'll talk about that later. And it's showing the original video that he just queued up was, he said 30 hertz, 30 FPS. So then this performance slide shows up, and we can see there's two columns. On the left is the game's standard path tracing implementation with, I would say, probably little like microcode optimization specifically tied to PS5 Pro architecture. It's just like a port from the PC version. And you can see that's running at 42.32 milliseconds. So that is actually quite a bit lower than 30 FPS. 20 FPS-ish region wouldn't be good enough for real-time rendering, at least at 1080p internal resolution. But next to that is what I presume the video is based on. He doesn't actually directly say it, but EAC is the research organization, engineering research organization within EA, and they do a whole bunch of crazy stuff like machine learning research, path tracing research. That's where Gibbs came from, their real-time GI solution they use in all their sports games. And here is a different path tracer where the total frame time cost is 23.36 milliseconds, which is a little bit above 40 FPS.
So that right there is actually pretty good. As we see, they're just wanting to give a presentation of it just running straight up on a PS5 Pro, not it being fully optimized. So we can definitely probably get it down to 900p, right? And get even more frames. It can get very interesting.
which he said was good enough for a 30 hertz presentation, 30 FPS. He also made his mention as part of this, I'm talking about it here, but this prototype work, there was zero promises at all that this will be shipping.
No, it's going to take some time.
We always say things with big caveats at DF, and so do developers. And so wasn't promised to be shipping in any version or any iteration of the game, although he does thank Mark Cerny at the end of the presentation. So I don't know. I kind of think this could be somewhere in the future.
Thanking Mark Cerny means that there was some team up about path tracing. So you kind of get the idea of a hidden link already being there, and he being ready already to be able to get path tracing ready for PlayStation, because it's already happening right now with the PS5 Pro being there. It gives you the idea that it's going to be worked on big time between Sony, AMD, and other developers. Just like I was telling people, FrameGen is going to come. Like, it's obvious. You just have to realize this.
Personally, but this is fantastic. There's a couple caveats though. In spite of that, the EA Seed Orca one is running really fast, but he specifically mentions that they kind of want to work on their own path tracing implementation. That's what it kind of sounded like more. Like they want to optimize that first, and they want to do some other things with that to make it running better. And also another thing to mention is that the daylight tracks are a lot cheaper to render than the nighttime tracks in this game. And it's always been that way, especially like when you play, what is the one in the rain that you always do, Rich?
I don't know what you're talking about.
When you're benchmarking this game, you do something in
Monaco.
Right. Okay. Yes. Monaco in the wet is the classic stress test, right?
Yeah. So like that has tons of lights, and one of the things that makes path tracing really expensive is when you get into many light scenarios, and that's when Reister starts getting a lot more expensive. So that is one aspect of the path tracing that is not represented here, and we would have to see if that were ever in a shipping product, if there would be large differences like we see on PC here. Another semi-caveat is that their original path tracer that they shipped on PC had a kind of band-aid solution to bring it out. At the end was for the secondary paths after the first one. So multi-bounce is actually handled by DDGI, which other path tracers like those found in like Cyberpunk or Indiana Jones, they use different types of Radiance caches when they do them. And they usually do it after the multi-bounce is already like been to like 2 or 3. It's like the 4th bounce where they start going to the caches. So this is already like a lighter weight thing. Doesn't mean it doesn't look good or something like that, but it's already a bit of a lighter weight thing. So it's not like you can't just suddenly port Cyberpunk to the PlayStation 5 Pro or something like that.
Exactly.
As much as that would be cool, it doesn't work that way. But specifically for this game, they did show off path tracing running on the PlayStation 5 Pro.
That's pretty impressive. I'm intrigued by this, obviously, Alex, because you're quite right. Sony hasn't even mentioned path tracing as a potential use case for the PlayStation 5 Pro. It's obviously got enhanced ray tracing, as you said, compared to RDNA 2. But the concept that it's capable of path tracing is kind of like, we thought it was off the table.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and when you look at other RT implementations that we've seen on PS5 Pro, we've seen, with Alan Wake 2, for example, that they actually had to deliver what was essentially a lower than low version of ray tracing for PlayStation, but which makes this all the more interesting. Something that I find really interesting, in addition to what you've said, the computational cost of the EA Seed Orca coming in at 23.36 milliseconds.
That's definitely a difference.
If you're at 30 hertz, you've got that's 33.3 milliseconds. So there's kind of like leeway here. Obviously, PSSR is going to take up some of that 10 millisecond headroom, so to speak. But I was thinking, a lot of the PlayStation 5 Pro games have been coming in at 864p, using PSSR with a 2.5x multiplier on each axis to get to 4K, right? That's 80% of 1080p. So that's another potential route forward there, depending on what the implications would be to image quality there, because upscaling ray tracing is a bit tricky, isn't it? But that is a potential option there. I really hope they ship it, right? I really hope they do something here. You know,
Yeah,
it's
that would be
a
crazy.
real statement. Certainly get a lot of interest back into Formula One 25, which is already like a really, really good PlayStation 5 Pro game that we highly recommend people check out. Kind of curious if they maybe might ship it in 26 instead, so they've got time to refine it. I don't know. So, Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, they're pretty fluid with these sort of rollouts. You could get away with, doing a patch update for the current version, and that'd be fine. I mean, yeah, it's fascinating. I mean, 30 FPS Formula One is an acquired taste, I'd say.
Yeah.
Fair point. Yeah.
But yeah, it's definitely like up our alleyway, isn't it? We'd love to see this DF just to see how well it runs, and obviously the breakdown of the buffer and how many milliseconds it takes to get a frame out with path tracing. I'm not familiar with the rest of the back end and how much else like lops on top of that. So 23.36. The one thing that stands out to me is like they've really made a huge saving. Their standard PT model on PC, it's the indirect paths part of it, which is they've cleaved off 17 milliseconds there to get with EA Seed's version of it, the Orca approach to it, which is amazing. I'm wondering how much we'd notice if we were to flip between the two and see indirect rays, like indirect bounces, degrade in quality. That could be very interesting to see. I'm so used to seeing like, oh, we've achieved this amazing thing, and then there's a voice in the back of my head that says, yes, but at what cost? And, maybe it's so subtle that no one would really mind. So that'd be very interesting to see.
That's a really good question, Tom. And so one thing that also came out earlier this week was, I'm going to send this over to Oliver, was a paper from NVIDIA titled Reester PT Enhanced Algorithm.
So guys, we kind of get that idea here. And remember, this is full path tracing, but it's not fully optimized. They were just running it on there and getting the idea of where that would be on a daytime track, which uses less resources than night, depending on what's going on. We kind of get this idea here. So imagine if they fully optimized that, said, you know what, let's try a 900p or 864p, fully optimized for the Pro, and then launch the first game that could ever do path tracing on consoles like that. And you get a solid 30 frames per second. And it's just seeing what path tracing would be like on consoles compared to other aspects. We get comparisons all over. Digital Foundry, we'll go deeper into it as well. I think this is cool because it really opens up a door that nobody thought would be ever opened till next generation. And it literally says a lot about how much Mark Cerny has been working with AMD and others as well behind the scenes. And then you see something like this pop up because they're doing things you just don't think that they would be doing, like this popping up with full path tracing. Why even put the Pro there? How were you even able to do that? Well, you were working with him, right? I mean, it's pretty obvious to see it.
Make advances for faster and more robust Reester path tracing. So for EA F1 25 on PC, they use Reester DI for the direct lighting, and they use Rieger, which is an AMD advancement for the indirect Reester implementation there, which like grounds it in world space with a voxel structure. Really cool stuff. But why I reference this NVIDIA paper which is a different type of technology, actually. It's not the stuff that ships in F1, but for much less performance, like half or even less, this paper shows that you can get even better quality using a similar technique, just with a lot more optimizations and better way to sample things. So one of the cool things like about that EA Orca Seed path tracer that they referenced there in the F1 presentation is that it could actually be even better quality than the original path tracing implementation because
Interesting.
Yeah, Reester is really, really new technology. I think it's like 2020 was the first time it came out. And they just keep making advancements on it and how to sample it better, get the first initial samples in a cheaper way. It's like a very expensive technique in general. So every single time you cut down like half of one part of it, it actually has a very large millisecond frame time effect down the chain. So To say the least, who knows? The future is hyper accelerating. It just makes me more confident that something like PlayStation 6 could support at least 30 FPS PT titles, because if it's already running at 30 FPS on something like a PS5 Pro, obviously with a lot of caveats there, it makes it much more relevant for the future of PlayStation 6.
Exactly.
I think I'm a bit more optimistic than you, Axe. I think we could probably do 60 based on this and the advancements being made and the fact that RDNA 5 is basically built for this kind of thing. That's kind of like the point of it, really, which is really, really exciting, right? I guess there's still sort of plenty of latitude for running sort of rasterized versions at super high frame rates as well, if that's possible. But man, I'd love to see path tracing on a console, and it's kind of like been one of these things where you look at what the requirement is in the current generation for running, really good high fidelity path tracing, and you kind of think, well, maybe it's not going to happen for the next generation consoles. But then you sort of see the direction of travel, the amount of optimization that's going on, the changes being made, the focus on it. I think that's quite an interesting thing. The fact that EA Codemasters are seriously considering this and actually coming up with working implementations for PS5 Pro, no less. I think it's really, really exciting stuff. Was there anything else in the presentation not specific to PlayStation 5 Pro that caught your eye?
Well, they have a very different requirements than every other path trace game, I would say. Tom made mention of it with playing F1 at 30 FPS as being an acquired taste. And if you think about it, like, the amount of distance that an F1 car travels, both like in in 33 milliseconds, is a huge distance. That means you can get massive disocclusion or massive space difference between like the spatial coordinates in one frame to the next. And that makes doing path tracing even more challenging. And that's one of the reasons why for their, at least according to Tom, that they did use DDGI for the secondary bounces, because it's a very stable structure as a car moves through it. So they basically were talking about how getting it to work at speed, both at 60 hertz as well as with cars moving so quickly, especially at those nighttime like Abu Dhabi at night, or Bahrain in the rain, as you've said, I think in the past, Rich.
Bahrain and Monaco.
Monaco.
We've done both.
I had to think about it. It's more challenging than other titles. And there was also a really interesting part about it, about the difference between NRD and ray reconstruction, like NVIDIA's Relax denoiser or real-time denoiser is really good to start with, and because you can debug it really easily. But RR gives way better results, but it's harder to debug because it's a black box and it picks up on all your mistakes, he said. Like, it always, if you make a mistake somewhere in your maths, like earlier in the pipeline, RR is going to show it like magnified 10 times because it just picks up on subtle correlations and, actually makes them look like something in the frame, whereas something like NRD would blur it over and you wouldn't see it. It's very interesting, that sort of difference to see. But hopefully presentations like this, which is, 2 engineers, less than 1 year's work, it shows that it is very doable, that it doesn't take much time, and the results were really amazing. Like, I really wish we had more time to cover F125 when it did came out. We kind of heard a little bit late that it was getting path tracing, and it was like with other titles, but I think it could have easily been a blowout video describing how it works. And I think if it's still going to be there in F126, presumably, right? Sure. So I think that's another thing to make sure we cover when the time comes.
It's very rare that the masters of code regress features from one to the next. So while I guess it hasn't been confirmed, I would be very, very surprised if they don't actually do it. Just one final question that I've got. You were talking about the 9070 XT. They were surprised by how well it performed on F125.
That says a lot about the Pro.
And that was a 4K quality mode, so it would have been like native 1440p. And were they talking about a performance target there, like 60 FPS or whatever?
Yeah, so at... it wasn't 60 FPS. It still didn't manage 60 FPS. It was like 33.5 milliseconds at Abu Dhabi at night, according to this year. So it was like running at less than half the speed of a 5090, but still less than half the speed at path tracing of a 5090 is actually a pretty good win for RDNA 4. You'd expect it to be worse. But the thing is, you're looking at apples and oranges here because
they're basically talking about the 9070 XC now. So there we have it, guys. Like he said, it's something that could be possible. They would have to fully optimize it more. Obviously, I don't think they could stay at native 1080p if they wanted to get everything else going with it. Drop it down to 900, optimize it more. It takes more time to learn about it. And he made it very clear that path tracing for each game is not the same as other games. Obviously, they have different engines and coders, so it's not going to be the same. We learned a lot about path tracing. We want to do that because it's going to be coming to PS6. And who knows if we'll get a 30 FPS mode for path tracing for a PS5 game in the future. Obviously, you have to be something a little bit older or not. Who knows? I don't know, but let me know what you guys think about this. Like I said, this was the full detailed video of it. I'm glad Digital Foundry did this because I wanted to see what they have to say. Still exciting stuff knowing that the PlayStation world is getting all these features. Not only did they get to the same neural network as FSR 4.1, but they were the first to do path tracing for a next-gen game. We get the idea here, and FrameGen will be the next coming. So Sony's doing big things with AMD, and it's not NVIDIA. So it's always good to see that other competition do things in a world that NVIDIA is not dominating. We're NVIDIA. Let me know what you guys think. Leave a comment down below. Peace out.